Hello, my name is Yilin Zhang, Team Rayceen Productions, today's co-host and moderator. And joining me today is none other than the goddess of DC, Rayceen Pendarvis. Welcome, Rayceen.
Welcome, my love. Greetings and salutations all.
Wonderful. It's such an honor to be here with you and our special guest today. So Rayceen, are you ready to get started?
Yes, I'm ready.
Fantastic. So joining us now are two very special guests, former DC Councilmembers Carol Schwartz and Yvette Alexander. Welcome, Carol and Yvette. Welcome, Yvette. Fantastic.
And they're coming in.
Fantastic. All right. Great to see all of you. Well, so we always want to get started with hearing a little bit about our guest's background and experiences, and the two of you just have a tremendous background. So Carol, we would love to start with you first. Could you tell us and our audience members a little bit about your background and experience?
Well, thank you. And it's so pleased to be with you. I have lived in Washington, D.C. for 56 years, having been basically raised in Texas. And I got involved in political life in 1974 when I ran for the Board of Education. And I served there for 2 terms. And then several years later, I got elected as an at-large member of the DC Council and was there 1 term from 85 to 89, but due to the death of, shocking death of my husband by suicide, unfortunately, and my children were 19, 18, and 16, once my term was over and I had a year left on my term, I chose not to run again and just went out in the community and did a lot of volunteer work, became the first woman president of the Metropolitan Police Boys and Girls Club in their, like 80-year history, and did many other things in the charity world. And then 8 years later, I ran again for my old seat, at-large seat on the council, and was reelected. And I served from 1997 until 2009. So I did the council for 12 years and the Board of Education for 8 years, and very, glad I was able to contribute in that way to our city.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. And now, Yvette, could you share also a little bit about your experiences and background?
Sure. Hi, I'm Yvette Alexander. I am a native of Washington, D.C. I started in politics really early, just volunteering. My parents were really civically active in their community. So it caught on with me probably at the age of 10 or 12, just volunteering on campaigns. Went to school here. I went to college here. My first job was here. I just can't get out of DC. So when a special election came about in 2007, Vince Gray was the Ward 7 council member. He went on to become chairman of the council. So there was a special election. Someone had to fill out 2 more years, about 18 months left in his term. So I used that opportunity to run for the seat. I won the seat, and I had the pleasure of serving with Carol for quite a few years. Now that I'm off the council, I've been off the council since 2017, and I currently have a consulting business in Washington, D.C., and it's primarily healthcare and government relations.
Wow, thank you so much. And I know 30 seconds is not enough time to capture the vast breadth of all of your experiences. And both of you, as I've watched and learned, have really shown a lot of resilience in your leadership styles. So thank you for being here with us again today. So Rayceen, can you get us started with the first question, please?
Sure. This is my first question. So I'll pose it to Carol and then I'll pose it to Yvette. Why did you want to run for office? And how would you describe your first campaign experience?
Okay, well, I didn't think I wanted to run for office because, this goes back to the woman role again. You got to realize that, I was born in 1944. And when I came to Washington, I was, in my 20s. And there weren't that many women in politics. I always thought I would marry somebody that might be interested in politics and I'd help him. That was the era. There weren't, it was just different. And, but the Board of Education, it was the first home rule election. The person who was filling the ward seat was leaving the Board of Education to run for the council. Finally, we could elect in 1974 our council, which is horrible to think that all those years we weren't able to elect our own officials. It's just preposterous and horrible. But anyway, I tried to get my husband to run and he wasn't interested. And for the board, and then I was a special education teacher and I had kids in the DC public schools already. And so I thought I'll run for the Board of Education, but I wasn't running. It was going to be an appointment because there was vacancies. The Board of Education could actually fill the vacancies of the people that had left. But then, because so many people left to run for office or for health reasons, there were 5 people on the Board of Education who were going to have to appoint 4 people. And they said, we don't want to do that. It's too much responsibility. So they asked the council and other members of government and Congress if they could put the Board of Education election on the ballot along with the council and mayor election. So I went for an appointment because I wasn't overwhelmed by an appointment because I really didn't, I didn't have that much self-confidence to go out there and run for election. I had 3 small children, 5, 4, and 2. It was just overwhelming. But when it was an appointment and I could write a letter, get friends of mine that knew me from my community service and charity work to write a letter for me, it seemed, oh, I can do that. But all of a sudden, midway in, it became an election. And I thought, oh dear, but by then so many people were helping me and so many people had bought into me and that I thought, well, darn, I'm going to just continue on. I felt a responsibility to the people who were helping me get the appointment. But I was really overwhelmed, I must tell you, because there were about 20 people going for the appointment. All of a sudden, when it became an election, only 2 of us ran. And the person I was running against was the vice president of the National Education Association. And while I was changing diapers, he was traveling the country giving educational speeches. And he also had, it was not supposed to be a partisan election. He turned it into a partisan election. I thought I was going to be chopped liver. I thought no way I was going to win that election. I was so nervous. I know, Rayceen, we've been friends for a long time, but I was so nervous then that my lip, I had no, saliva. My lip would stick to my teeth. And so it was embarrassing. The whole thing was embarrassing. I thought I'm going to get cream, but at least I tried and I won. I got like 57% of the vote. And then I went on and got reelected. And so that's how I went for an appointment, not an election, but I got thrown out there. But of course, as you all well know, between my mayor's elections and my council elections and the board elections, I've gone through lots of elections. So, but at the beginning, I was scared to death of the thought of going through an election. Obviously, got over it.
How about that? And we thank you for all those many years of service and continued service. Thank you so much. And how about you, my beloved Yvette?
Interestingly enough, now I had worked on several campaigns. The most recent campaigns was Anthony Williams when he ran for mayor. That was in '98. And he had 2 terms. And then Linda Kropp ran for mayor. So I was campaigning, working on both of their campaigns. And I remember, and when Anthony Williams won, actually, I became a member of the DC Democratic State Committee. So we were really active in local politics then through the Democratic Party. And then when Linda Crott ran for mayor, I was campaigning for her. I was one of her Ward 7 coordinators. And people started asking me, was I Linda Crott? You know, because I was out there campaigning so much. And when I would go around here with her, I would hear a stump speech. And I started memorizing her stump speech, actually, and I was really campaigning for her. So when Vince Gray won the chairman seat and there was an open seat, I said, well, what the heck? I think I'm going to try to run. It's an open seat. So it's just as much, you know, it's my chance as well as anyone else's chance because it's an open seat. There were 26 people who ran in Ward 7. And it then got narrowed down to about 19 people. So I'm still campaigning and running around. I mean, really my own campaign. And I was so excited. And Carol will laugh about this. I was so excited. I had raised about $5,000 for my campaign. I was so excited. I said, wow, I have $5,000 for my campaign. Well, someone told me there was a poll taken. I really didn't know much about polling or anything. You see, I was excited about $5,000. But someone called me and they said, Yvette, someone called my home and you were on a poll. And I was like, what does that mean? They said, if you're polling, you know, if your name is on a poll, you have a good chance in this election of winning, you know, you're polling. So I said, oh, wow. So then people started coming to my campaign. They were like, well, you know, I'd like to be your manager. I'd like to be your treasurer. Everyone started jumping on board, but still no endorsement. And there were like 19 people running. So maybe about 2 months before the election, Vince Gray, who was then chair, he finally endorsed, and he endorsed me as the candidate. And it was just interesting from me raising $5,000 on my own with friends and family. When Vince endorsed me, I raised $280,000 like in the matter of a month. And that was like, wow, what is going on? People just started giving me money. And then I had another official announcement of my campaign when he ran. So for the next 2 months, like a machine took over the campaign. And out of about 19 candidates that were all active in Ward 7, all leaders in Ward 7, I won. And I had to turn around and run again a year later in 2008. And I won that for a full 4-year term. So it was really interesting, but I was eager. Like, I didn't care with the 5,000. I was knocking on doors. I had a banner. I had T-shirts. So I was naive to what it really takes to run a campaign. But nonetheless, I didn't let it discourage me. I said, you know, I'm excited about this. I'm meeting the people. I know the ward. I was actually raised in Ward 7, so I was really excited. And it paid off.
Yes, it did. And we thank you for that. And we thank you for all those years of excellent service.
Thank you.
Yilin,
Wow.
my dear.
That is just fantastic to hear. I know that your stories are just going to be so inspirational to our viewers and people who are looking to run for office. So what I was hearing from Carol, you talked about going from an appointment to an election and then having to balance your personal and professional life and having a lot of people who really believed in you and wanted to volunteer in your campaign. And what I heard from Yvette is you were working on a lot of campaigns for other candidates and you just became so awesome at it and you really loved it. And then you decided to run for an open seat. But I'm curious, was there a moment either before you ran for office or maybe even while you were running for office that you felt like you were really, you got this, like you're ready to run for office? Was there ever that emotional pivotal point?
Well,
and we'll start with Carol.
okay, I can't say there was a pivotal point other than when it became, you know, from an appointment to an election. That it was like I'm in there. I'm not going to stop now. But I do want to talk I don't know if you were going to ask a question about this, but I got to tell you, for a woman running in those days, like when I ran for mayor, for example, and I did the first time in 1986, people would say to me, well, we already tried a woman. You know, we had one elected woman for mayor. And I just wanted to say, what do you mean you already tried a woman? What about the men you tried that didn't work out? I mean, but it was, women were always put to a very higher level, and you really kind of had to apologize for being a woman. The other thing is that if you also had zip and personality, like I think certainly Yvette has, and I have, and that too was kind of like, instead of saying, oh, wasn't that great, it was also, if you had zip and personality and you look pretty good, well, how smart could you be? So you had to wonder about that. That became an issue as well. And so I just wanted to throw that in as we're talking about women in politics and how far we've come, that I think now we are semi on an equal footing, not totally, but close. But certainly we're not in the days I first ran, and I think even when Yvette first ran.
Thank you, Carol. And next we'll go to the lovely Yvette.
A pivotal moment for me, actually, I was working in district government. I was working for a Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking for 5 years prior. And in order to run for office, you can't work in government. So I quit my job, and that's how eager I was and just how passionate I was about running. I quit my job and at the end of 2006 and began running a campaign. I just felt it in my gut. I said, you know, now's my chance to do it, because I said there's not an incumbent that I'm running against, so I have equal footing with everyone else. So I quit my job and I said, I'm going to do this. And it was really important. I mean, I'm a spiritual person, but it was a really pivotal moment when one of my campaign team told me, because I was getting nervous, you know, when it was closer to election time. And I said, oh my God, am I going to win this? Am I going to lose? She said, don't worry about it. She said, whatever happens, it's in God's will, whatever happens. If you lose, then this was not for you. And if you win, it is for you. And from that moment on, that just put me at ease. I said, well, if I don't win this, this must not be the path that I'm to take. And if I win it, then I will definitely go on this path and be successful with it. And there you have it. I mean, it put my mind to ease.
Wow. And you have to be not tied to the outcome, but just really be committed to the process. And that's what I really see you two have really done. And just a follow-up question, Yvette, is, did you experience any different treatment between female and male candidates, or experienced it yourself? Could you speak a little bit about that?
Oh, of course. I was nice, I was friendly, but I wasn't the most intelligent person to hold the seat. She's nice. I got all that, about your appearance. We're judged greatly about that. There was a lot of stereotypes put on women, and there still is to this day. We're held more accountable than the men are. So I had to prove myself even that much more. And it got to a point, it was interesting because Linda Crop was the last woman on the council at that point, and there were no other women on the council. Ward 4 and Ward 7 were vacant seats on the council, and all the other seats were filled by men. So we got the thing, don't vote, oh, she's just running, trying to run on the platform that she's a woman running. So I had to prove that, no, there are no women on the council, but I'm running because I'm qualified to fill the position. Yes, I am a woman. Yes, there should be diversity on the council, but I'm not running solely on the platform that I am a woman, and a woman needs to be on the council. So, I mean, a lot of people try to use that against me, that I'm just running on the platform that I'm a woman, vote for me, because there are no women on the council at that point. So yeah, it was a challenge.
Wow, thank you, Yvette. And I also do appreciate what you said, Carol, about having, the gatekeepers put up men instead of women, and then women, you two, not necessarily the first time you ran, having other people tell you that you have the capacity and that you can win office, and not having that is such a, it's so hard to run when you don't have that. So really, again, it's amazing that you two ran and won and have come so far. So Rayceen, I'd like to pass it to you for the next question.
Wow, wow. I mean, just thinking about it, look at the council now. There are more women on the council than there's ever been. So, that's a big plus. So, you ladies had your hand in it, and you were pushing and didn't know you were part of the trailblazing path to where we are today. And I thank you once again. But do campaigns prepare you for being elected official?
Well, I think that, well, first I want to apologize for getting up, but my boyfriend and I have a rescue dog, and she was outside, and I was hoping to keep her outside and so she wouldn't interrupt, but she kept wanting to come in, and now she's playing with her toys and it's a little noisy. So I want you to know what's going on in my life and why I got up, but I love her and I love rescue animals. And so, but it can be a little interrupting, and it is right now, but it's, I just wanted to explain. I do think that campaigning really gets you into the swing of being, out there working hard and all those things, which when you actually get the office, you have to have lots of energy and lots of going from place to place, and going from, a battle on the council to going to a community meeting where you're supposed to look all peppy and happy, even though you've gone through hell and back during a meeting of the council. So it is a good, like prep for the job. But I mean, I like both aspects, but I loved campaigning because I like people. And I just come alive when I'm with people. And so I love the campaigning. And the job I loved because I like getting things done, and hopefully for the betterment of our community and our people. But I love both, but campaigns are certainly more fun.
Thank you. How about you, my beloved?
Agreed. Campaigning is fun. I mean, it's such an optimistic outlook, and campaigning, people do challenge you and they ask you questions. Now I would say the first time you campaign, it's really fun because, you have a wish list and a prospect of what you plan to do when you get there. Now, once you're in office and you're running for re-election, the campaigning is still fun, but it can be a little different because now people are challenging you on things that they did like and things that they didn't like that you did when you held office. So it's a little bit more accountability, a little bit more of a challenge when you run for re-election. But it's all fun. I mean, I love competition. I love challenges, and campaigning is fun. You get to meet people that you didn't really know even lived, in the city. You get to ask questions. People get to ask you questions. They learn more about who you are. So campaigning is fun. Does it prepare you for the council in a way? But I have to tell you, you learn so much more when you're on the council that nothing can prepare you for until you get there. And in politics, for legislation and the working that you have to do among your colleagues and to really get things done. So it is a difference. It does prepare you, but until you get into that elected office, nothing can really fairly prepare you for that until you really get there, in my view.
How about that? And that's important. You know, it's a learning experience, and it teaches you, you know, the do's and the don'ts. Yilin, my love.
I can interject. I just want
Sure.
when she was saying when you've already been elected and you're out there, Yvette was saying that, you know, how people want to challenge you about your votes and all. And I kind of say this, it's a little extreme, but I'll say you can cast 100 votes. And most people, if they like 99 of your votes, they just kind of sit there and say, okay, just give them one vote they don't like. And that's the one they remember. You know, so actually serving and is hard in that way, because you just, you know, as I said, they can like most of what you do, but do that one they don't like, and that is the one that's remembered.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Rayceen, for asking that question. It was insightful to hear your responses, because I think that a lot of people who maybe have not been involved in campaigns or not been in a campaign, not ran for office, they don't know how tough. It's like, it's worse than running a marathon. It's like sprinting a marathon, basically. And then the perception that once you've gotten into office, you know, you can just coast. But then, Yvette, as you mentioned, it gets even harder. So I appreciate that insight. It's a really special experience running for office, and it is really, really tough. So speaking of running for office and being in office, I would love to hear from you two. What aspects of either your campaign experience or being an elected official are you most proud of? And I know there's many, many things, but if you could pick one, maybe two, what would it be? And why don't we start with Yvette this time?
You know, the impact, what makes me most proud is when, like, I've been in office, I have been in office long enough to kind of see young people that have transitioned from elementary to high school to work or college and beyond. So what really has been most memorable or for me, or most effective for me, when I run into one of those young people and they remember me speaking at their graduation, or they remember me giving them an internship, or I think just the way that people, or if a mother comes up to me and says, I remember when you paid my electric bill through your constituent fund, or you gave my child money for his books in school. It's those things that have touched me personally when someone comes to me and remembers. And to be honest with you, I don't really remember a lot of the things I did, but what impacts me most is when, people who I've touched them in some kind of way, they run up to me, they'll see me now and say, thank you so much for doing this or that. And that fulfills me, because we often do so much that you can't remember. We're only one person, and, for Carol, she represented the entire city. And me too for a vote, but for the ward, about 70, 80,000 people against one person. So when people come up to you and just tell you those little moments that really impacted them, I think that's what made it all worthwhile for me.
Wow. Thank you, Yvette. Now to the lovely Carol.
Well, I think, I look back with pride at like starting the Department of the Environment and having the strongest tree protection bill in the country, as well as the strongest whistleblowers protection in the country. I'm very proud of those bills. But the thing I'm most proud of is the one that did me in, and that was giving sick leave to workers in the private sector. And it was my demise. All the rich garage people and all the rich business people were mad about having to give sick leave to workers, and so they came after me, and it did me in. I lost my last election because of it. But it's the thing I'm most proud of, because I don't know if people realize this, but major corporations, like Walgreens and major corporations, they have 51% of their workers. This is back then, and this is in the late, like in 2000s. 51% of even their workers were part-time. And then you get into smaller businesses, most of their workers, many of them are part-time. And why? So they don't have to give a minute of sick leave, a minute of vacation time. So when you would see these women in a Walgreens, for an example, and they would be standing there, usually African-American women, usually older, standing there, most people get to sit in their jobs, standing there, knowing that they probably had 2 or 3 jobs in order to feed their families, get up early in the morning, come and stand there in a job, didn't get 1 minute of sick leave. And I knew that was sinful. And I had a chance to do something about it. And I did, knowing that it was probably going to be my demise, but I figured the heck with it. My living will not be in vain. And my living was not in vain, because every single part-time worker in the District of Columbia, regardless of where they live, even if they live in the suburbs, but they're poor people that are working part-time, trying to make a living, they now get sick leave. And it's, I'm the most proud of that. It's what did me in. People say, Carol, why did you insist upon that? Because we now lost your service. And I said, because it needed to be done. And it took that kind of courage to do it. And so that's the thing I'm most proud of. And it lives on. And actually there are 37, we were the first in the country. And now there are 37 states. The last time I looked, I think it may be even more that have it. And President Obama used my sick leave bill, and all of them have used my exact sick leave bill, which I wrote. The advocates didn't write, I wrote it, because I compromised it so it wouldn't hurt small businesses having to give 10 days. They only have to give 3 days a year. And but President Obama uses it for private businesses that do business with the federal government. They have to give sick leave, and they use the bill that I wrote that the council passed as their bill, their law.
Wow. No, thank you. That's wonderful, Carol. And a theme that I'm hearing from the two of you is that you do not compromise on your values. As a leader, you have your ethics and values, and the way that you lead, the way that you legislate is by making sure that those values are carried through. So thank you for sharing those stories. And Rayceen, I would love to invite you for the next question.
Well, final question. Please share an important lesson learned or wisdom gained from your political experience. I'll turn it over to Yvette, and then I'll give it over to Carol.
Okay, and while we're talking about legislation, this is really important and something that I learned. And Carol, I'm glad that you went with your passion and what was right and not being influenced by political pull for that sick leave bill. I actually did, and I regret doing that, because in my values, I did not agree with this, but when you represent, the voters, you voted that way. And I'm going to be candid with you, for the same-sex marriage vote that took place, I was one of the 2 council members that voted against the same-sex marriage bill. And I did that not because of my personal thoughts, but because of the thoughts of the residents in Ward 7 at that time. The Defense of Marriage Act, and President Obama at that time was still very supportive of that. All the ministers in Ward 7, there's a church and a liquor store on every corner in Ward 7, Rayceen. You know that. There were ministers that were pressuring me. There were constituents that were pressuring me from the church to do this. So I voted based on the views of my Ward 7 constituents. And in that one case, I said, well, I know I represent the voice of Ward 7 and the needs of Ward 7, but I think sometimes you have to go with your gut and what you truly believe is the right thing to do, aside from sometimes what people, are pressuring you to do, or to vote a certain way, even though you know, you don't feel in your gut and in your heart that that was the right thing to do. And that was one thing. And I hate to say regrets because I really don't have regrets in life. It's like a learning experience for me. And that was a learning experience for me because lo and behold, after I voted that way, people started evolving. And then everyone has become, you know, much more inclusive and much more supportive because that's a, you know, that's a way of life now that everyone, it was a major change at that time when the vote took place, but now it's commonplace. And now everyone has evolved and is supportive of it. And I often think back and say, wow, if I voted that way, look what happens anyway. Down the line, everyone is supportive of it, the majority of people, even in the faith community, people are supportive. So for that, I often look back and say, go with your gut and go with, as long as it's not imposing on anyone and harmful, if you think it's the right thing to do, and sometimes you think what's best for the community even better than your community does, sometimes you have to make those hard choices. And that's one hard choice that I really should have made because down the line, things change and evolve. So that's one point. Second point, what I've learned is that don't take things really personally. Business is business and friends are friends. And I think sometimes in politics, you learn that people are only your friends and associates for their special interests. And I really did learn that somewhat the hard way that I learned it. But, you know, you have your friends and your family before you come into politics. So I've learned be very leery or very keen on who is your friend after you get into office. Are they really your friends for, you know, for your true friendship, or are they really in your best interest, or are they in your best interest for their best interest? And that's interesting because you learn that while you're in office, and then after you leave office, where are some of these people? Or even when you're in office, what have some of these, you know, different factions done while you're in office? So I've learned that. And I think that's very important for people to realize because you have a lot of friends and a lot of interest when you're in office. And when you leave, you have to have that strong foundation and be solid enough to know, that was one phase of your life. Now this is the next phase. So I just thank goodness for my friends and family, and even some of those that I met through politics that have remained the best of friends for me, and that we have the interest, for the city in mind. But I've just learned that was a valuable lesson that I learned. And my heart is always so open and welcoming to everyone. So that was a gullible part for me. But, not bitter or not, hardened by that, but just a little bit more insightful and knowledgeable about those things now.
And Carol, please share your important lesson learned or wisdom gained from your political.
This is not just has to do with politics, but a lot to do with politics. But I think it's the lesson I have most learned in life is do not be your own worst enemy when it comes to talking yourself out of doing something you want to do. If it's not bad, if it's bad for you, of course you should talk yourself. But I think a lot of us have fear. A lot of us have lack confidence. And I think it sometimes straps us in from doing things we feel we want to do or even should do. And that was my case when it came to running. I was scared. I didn't have the confidence. Who was I to think I could run for office? Or who was I to think I could make decisions for others in a formal way, both on the Board of Education and the council? But I just want to say that I think we all inside are not so confident. And I think we should not let fear and that lack of confidence hold us back, because, I ended up taking that fear and brushing it aside and taking all those things and just jumping in and doing it. And now, as a person who's not that far from 80, a year and a half away from 80 years old, I want to say that I will not be that little old lady on the nursing, home steps, rocking back and forth, saying, I should have, I could have, why didn't I? I really did it. I always, just jumped in, whether it be a personal thing to help somebody, or in a scary situation, or a political thing that was awfully overwhelming, or whatever, what your goals are or what your desires are. Don't be your own worst enemy. Be helpful to yourself by saying jump, and if it's not dangerous, jump, do it, so you don't live to become that old person, male or female, that says, oh, I should have, why didn't I? It's so much better to jump in there, fail. I've lost many elections. I failed at other things, personally and professionally, but I don't have regrets that I didn't do what I thought I should have done. And that goes with that legislation I talked about that, made people's lives better, but it's this personal thing, whatever it is, you don't want to have regrets. And as you get older, so I would say, don't hold yourself back. Give yourself a boost and get in there and at least try.
And we thank you. Yilin?
Wow, thank you. Thank you too so much. And thank you, Rayceen. I can't tell you how many people, including myself, it helps to hear you two be vulnerable, to talk about confidence, to talk about your experiences, because I think a lot of times in politics, people feel the need to be stronger than they are, but being vulnerable is really, it makes people feel closer to you, and it makes them feel more empowered to run for office or be a part of a campaign, be civically engaged. So Rayceen's question and your answers inspired just a quick follow-on question. And I know a lot of women candidates would love to hear from you two. What is a piece of advice you might pass off to female candidates who are looking to run for office?
Well, I would say just do it. Do it. I mean, if you think you've got, do it for the right reasons. I mean, I got to tell you, like seeing your picture in the paper or being on TV and all, that's like that much of it. It is so minuscule. I mean, it is a lot of hard work, and it is a lot of frustration, and it's a lot of not such, fun things. But it certainly is satisfying when you make a difference. And so I would say just do it, but do it for the right reasons, because I think we need people that really care much more about others than they do themselves in elective office.
Just do it. I love it. And it's to do it, to do something versus to be someone. That's a quote that I love. Yeah. And Yvette, what piece of advice would you like to pass on?
My advice is just to get involved in the process. Start at all levels. If you want to volunteer at your child's school, if you want to become an ANC commissioner, if you want to be the head of your civic association, if you want to be involved in a campaign. What was really interesting to me when I ran my campaign, I could not really find a lot of women treasurers, campaign managers, communications people. Get involved in the political process. Learn, that if you don't want to run for office, you can support someone else who's running for office to gain that experience and to go. There are a lot of women's organizations now that support women who are running for office. Running Start, Emily's List. I belong actually now to a association. I'm on the board of the Ascend Fund, and it is a nonpartisan organization, but we support women running for office. There's a lot of avenues of support now for women running for office, but don't let things hold you back. Don't let your family hold you back. Don't let the community hold you back. Stand your ground, and you can do it. You have the confidence and you have the support out there now through many organizations for women to run. So I would encourage more women to run. There's a lot of support out there now for them to do so, but you can start on any level, and that activism or that leadership that may give you that boost and confidence you need to run.
Wow, so well said. Thank you so much, Yvette and Carol, for joining us in today's discussion. And so we have this tradition where before we leave, we would love to hear some shameless plugs. So, and I know our viewers want to know, how can they hear more about you, what you're doing, stay in touch? So can you share a little bit about how our viewers can do that? And why don't we start with you, Yvette?
Well, I currently have a consulting business, Y Alexander and Associates. I'm on YVetteYalexander.com. You can call me. Look, my phone number has not changed for the past 20 years. So you can Google me, you can access me. But my shameless plug, and Carol is, I mean, she's found romance in her twilight years. I want to find romance in my twilight years. I'm single, I'm ready to mingle. That is a true shameless plug. So if anyone has a perfect match for me, let me know. I'm looking for that perfect guy to spend my life with. He doesn't have to worry about me being on the council. He doesn't have to worry about anyone in our business. I'm a private citizen now, and life goes on. But that's my shameless plug. One more shameless plug for all of the cannabis consumers out there. I just want to educate people on the legal businesses in DC and the illegal businesses. Gifting is for home use, home grow, and home use, home grow, and home share. These businesses out there that are gifting marijuana, that are gifting cannabis, they're illegal businesses. Go to one of the 7 legal businesses in the city that are licensed. Their product is safe and tested. And that's my other shameless plug.
Wonderful. Thank you, Yvette. And Carol, what is your shameless plug?
Well, gosh, I wrote a book called Quite a Life from Defeat to Defeat, ... and back, not just speaking of political defeats, of which people know, but also personal defeats, and back, ... and back. They were in all the bookstores in DC except for one, Kramer's, which was where I had always used to shop, and yet they wouldn't take a self-published entrepreneur, and I had always gone to them because they were small entrepreneurs. But every other bookstore in Washington, DC did carry the book, but after 4 years, they do not. I have some available, not a lot, because I did self-publish, but anybody that's interested can go to Carol, C-A-R-O-L, of O-F, like in Frank, WDC@yahoo.com. And then my phone number, I don't mind giving that out. It also has been published forever, 202-332-6832, 202-332-6832. And I'm selling them at a discount price now because, you know, they've been out there for about 5.5 years. But it's a plug, and so it's not that I'm going to make any money on the book at this point, you know, at a discounted price, but it is my life story, which a lot of people have said, who have read it, said have been very inspirational, because I had a very tough childhood. I had only one sibling, a brother 1.5 years older, who I started taking care of at 5 years old, I had to work in our little mama papa store starting at 8. My father was quite brutal, and I was an abused child. Thank God, not sexually, but physically. And then I marry a neat, wonderful guy who was, you know, had mental illness and treated it with alcohol. And he ended up committing suicide when my children were 17, 16. I'm sorry, 19, 18, and 16. And so it was a life that's had many blessings, but had many, many hardships and tragedies. And people said that who have read it, said that it really inspired them in their own lives to just, just pick yourself up, wipe yourself off, and just keep on trucking, keep on trucking. And then also giving back to others who are even in worse condition than you are and had even worse childhoods than you had. As bad as mine was, there were many that had far worse. At least we had food on the table. And so that sometimes when you're going through your own tragedies and your own things, to not get so self-absorbed in that you forget that there are people in far worse shape, and that when you help them out, whether it be charity work or through political office or teaching or nursing or whatever it may be, that you actually realize that your own life, sad though it might be, hard though it might be, is so much better than some other people that can't walk, can't talk, can't see. And that helped get me through my own life and my own tragedies. And I try to inspire people to do that. And they said I did it pretty effectively in my book. So if you're interested in it, call me. And but just keep on trucking.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Carol and Yvette, and thank you for sharing your stories and your resilience. So Rayceen, could you please give us the last word?
The last word. Well, these women have spoken on the resilient spirit, trailblazers, and we thank you for that. And please visit Rayceen.com. That's RAYCEE.com. And to all of those watching, please follow Team Rayceen on social media. Subscribe to Team Rayceen on YouTube channel. But most of all, thank you for watching.